I'm Tanaya, and the graphic novel I read was Estranged by Ethan Aldridge. It is considered a graphic novel, even though it originally started as a webcomic, a weekly webcomic, and Ethan kind of envisioned the story being told in a physical book, and yeah. So it was published last year, August 7th, by HarperCollins. Ethan Aldridge did the artwork and the main story. The lettering was done by Jim Tierney, and the cover design was done by Catherine San Juan. It is 208 pages, but there are some pages at the end showing how Ethan, the development of how he created the characters and whatnot. So Act 1 ends on page 31, and Act 2 begins on page 33, and Act 3 starts on page 186. For the most part, this fits the model that we discussed or learned about in this class, with Act 2 having more pages than Act 1 and Act 3, but it also differs because Act 3 has less pages than Act 1, and from my understanding, both Act 1 and Act 3 are supposed to have the same amount of pages, but this book's different from that. So the story of Estranged, turn on the camera, is mainly about the character Edmund, because he is a changeling that was switched with a human child. Literally, that's his name. I don't know why the parents named him something else, but that's the point of the story. When they were a year old. While Edmund lives in the world above, basically our world, his human parents and his human older sister, Alexis, don't really understand what's going on with him. Or what he is, for that matter. Child, the human child that was replaced by Edmund, lives in the world below with the king and the queen of the changelings. During a celebration, an evil sorceress named Hawthorne transforms the king and the queen into rats and takes over the throne. It is later discovered that she's actually the aunt to Edmund, so she has a legal right to the throne, but nobody really likes her. So the child has his best friend, Wick, which is actually a wax golem. They go to the world above to help find Edmund so that they can save both the world above and the world below. The main goal is to basically, the two main characters, to dethrone Hawthorne and to set everything right that she's basically disrupted. While on this goal, both Child and Edmund, their goal is to find which world they truly belong in. Because even though Edmund's from the world below, but he was raised in the world above. So he's like, where do I fit in? And the same goes with Child, because obviously he was raised in the opposite way of Edmund. The conflict in Act 2 supports both of these goals, because in Act 2, that's when we actually meet Edmund. We actually meet Edmund. Here he uses magic to basically burn his sister's hair. Not on purpose, obviously, but yeah. It has a clear beginning, middle, and end. You kind of know where they're going and how the characters are changing. And the characters change. Alexis, the older sister, changes from being this sister that picks on Edmund and, you know, the typical stereotypical sister that kind of mean to her younger sibling. She ends up becoming a sister that's like it doesn't matter where you came from, you're still my brother. And she even accepts Child, who's like, I didn't know you, I wasn't there with you growing up, but you're still my brother too. So she becomes this welcoming character to Edmund, because Edmund's biggest fear was like, I won't be accepted because I'm different. And for Alexis to say, no, 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 you're part of this family no matter what, and the fact that she outreaches the same thing to Child is also very important. Edmund changes from the character, as I said, he doesn't know where he belongs because he is in fact a Fey child, and he has magic powers, and he was raised by human parents, so he's like, where do I fit in? I'm an outcast, I don't truly belong here, but they're still my family. And he ends up he learns about his family below that raised Child, and basically both Child and Edmund discover what true family is. It's not who raised you, it's not who you grew up with, it's who shares your story. And basically the ones that share their story is each other, and now Alexis, who's like, you're both family and I'm going to help you on this giant quest that you're undergoing. And Child wants in the end they belong to the whichever world that they truly belong to, but they still recognize that this is my family because they share my story. Sorry, I'm having like teeth problems here. So the story does establish effective transitions. The really cool thing is, I guess this doesn't really matter. When we're in the setting of the world below, the panel pages, or the gutter pages, I guess, are actually black, versus when we're in the world above, because then everything becomes white, and that's one of the ways to tell the difference, or for the reader to know, hey, we're in the world below, or we're in the world above, with the humans or the changelings. So that was really interesting. And it does run as a mini comic. You can follow the directional flow is obviously very obvious. You follow it through and you kind of know where you end up at. And it does make use of each page as a personal comic, because you basically, as you can see, this page ends with Edmund feeling kind of disheartened because he gets in trouble for setting his sister's hair on fire. And whatnot. Would I recommend this story to any of my fellow classmates? I would. If they're interested in fantasy, anything that, if they have an interest in changelings or a wax golem, or just a fun story about learning about what to be considered a family is. And I would also recommend this to my friends and to even my family, because this is a really good book. The story behind it is really meaningful and impactful, because who doesn't feel like an outsider inside their own family? I know for a fact that I've experienced this multiple times, and I can kind of relate to both Child and Edmund, even though I'm not a changeling. But it is a very good book, and I would highly recommend it to anybody. And personally, I hope more comes from Ethan Aldridge, because I'm not ready to leave this world yet. The sad thing, though, is I would have expected more from the ending when Edmund and Alexis and Child, who later becomes Edmund, and Edmund's real name is actually Cinder, they end up telling their human parents what's going on, and it just ends with that. We don't actually get to see how that plays out. And for me personally, I would really want to see how that works and how the parents handle it, because obviously the children handle it a lot better than anyone else. And another page because why not? This is actually finger backwards. This is actually Wick. Something happens at the end of the book, and he gets reanimated again or recreated because wax melts. And but yeah, the story itself is pretty amazing, and I would recommend it to anybody.